Hi guys, welcome back to chapter 10. Now for chapter 10, we will be setting up the cameras around the scene. And the first question here is, where do we place the camera? It's really hard to start from nothing. So the answer is, I'll give you a few seconds to think about it. Okay, now the answer is that you have to follow a certain logic. Obviously, and the logic, in this case, is storytelling. So now, let's go here and open up a collection and calling it camera. Okay, so now we are ready to place our first camera with the logic bearing in mind that it is storytelling. So let's go to camera and add this camera right here. All right, now with this camera that we've added, now we can start to think about how we can begin the story. Now, with fairy tales in mind, they all begin with long, long time ago in a land far, far away, right? And in that case, it is to establish the context. So for our shot, it is also to establish context, such as the time of day, which we can represent through our lighting, the people involved, which we can see here, as well as what is the incident that is taking place. So from here, we see that there are two characters and a claw machine. And aside from that, we can also think about, all the different elements composing of that scene. For this case, it's all these grid-like repetitive AC units that looks like a circuit. And the character within this scene is like being stuck in a circuit board or stuck in a maze. And it brings about a sense of misdirection. So here, let's just place our scene. Before it gets stuck in the building behind it, let's just place it here. And we will go back and adjust the different lenses and other settings after all the cameras are placed. All right, now let's place our second camera. Now, what about the second shot? If the first shot is to establish context, let's go back to the first shot again. Now, the second shot is what attracts us the most within the first shot. And in this context, it is this here, this incident that we've conveniently also highlighted in pink. It is most eye-catching. So for our second shot, we want to go directly into this incident. Just like a mystery story, it starts off with someone being murdered. In our case, we go directly into what is happening right after the opening of the context. Okay, and let's just place it somewhere here. So we're using our main character's perspective to look at this character here. And this brings the viewer closer to the scene with a sense of a presence, because you are, in essence, sharing the same view as the main character here. And yep, and as you can see here, the main character occupies the majority of the scene. And then this gives the sense that the character is really pushing herself onto this character. So there's a sense of pressure coming in onto the character that is in light. So let's just place our second camera here. We can also copy our camera. So let's make a copy and go back. And after seeing the incident, our next course of action is to show the viewers who our main character is. And we can show the viewers what she looks like, what her expression is, and as well as what is her state of mind. So then we bring our camera into the claw machine to have a full frontal view of what the character looks like. And then we're using this overhead shot. So it also sort of represents it shows the dilemma that the character is in and the pressure that she's in. Okay. And now let's go on to the last shot. So now that the main character is revealed and the incidence is revealed, we want to know what is truly happening between the main character and our supporting character. And in this case, through the lens of a bystander. So this is where we can place our last shot. So this establishes the connection between the two, but also more interestingly, we're dividing the scene up into left and right so that there is a distinct barrier that is cutting the two from each other, but at the same time, we have a connection between the two characters. Okay, so now that our story is told, we can summarize these 4 shots, and that these 4 shots complete the smallest unit of a narrative, right? So we have this, go in, main character, and connection. So through this main, so a movie is composed of hundreds of these small units of narratives, and what we are completing here is just the first one. And what happens next, if we are doing a movie, it would be what the choice of the main character is, whether she smashes the window open to rescue this person on the inside, or she gives up and leaves. So this is all a course of action that can stem out from this one single unit of narrative. Okay, now we're ready to get into some of the more technical parts, such as this. Our camera is cut off by the building from behind. So what we can do is we can move the focal lens so that this gives us sort of a wide angle, like that. So in this case, we can see the view much more complete. And we can also go here, and we can change the rotation as before, change it to 90, like how we place the camera for our characters, and then just have these to 0. So then we have a camera that is facing directly at our scene. And we can also move this up and down, so there's more control over where we're moving. So we want our scene to be sort of like that. So then this also completes our composition of placing our incident. Let's move this over a little bit more. Whoops. Somewhere like this. So they are lying on the 1/3 line. And to help us, we have our composition guides. So we can turn this on. Let me turn off the extras. Or wait, is this part of the extras? Yeah, okay. Okay, you can see it here. It's really light and gentle. So yeah, so let's change our view. We can change it to black and white. So you can see here that, okay, our character is mostly placed along the 1/3 line here. And the other half is like this. This is cutting right near about where the 1/3 line is. So this is our composition. And then we have a frame within a frame. So we have this outer frame and then an inner frame, and we have the final frame. So this is sort of like the frame within a frame kind of look. And with our composition line on, this is utilizing the 1/3 line, or you can turn on the golden ratio, and this is within smack in the middle of the golden ratio line. Okay. Now for our second shot, we want this shot to have a wider angle. With the focal length at 50, we have the least distortion. We don't get the distortion from zooming in or the wide angle distortion from the wide angle, this is 50. Now, because we want this scene to be a little more dramatic, right, let's move this also to have a wider angle of a lens. So then we have a little stretched edges, which sort of is like a zooming line onto our main focus here. And now we can also turn on our guides and have this character sitting above the 1/3 line along here. So she's placed on the top. So we also get the composition that we're looking up, and she has lights shining on her or behind her, and she's all lit up, sort of like a holy figure, or like a figure that is of importance. And then our character in the shadow occupies most of the area, and she's pushing herself onto this character. So we have this nice dynamic of light and shadow. And if it's hard to see with our edges, we can always just turn our pass out down up to 1, so our borders are black, and we can see better exactly what we are capturing here. Okay, so let's press S to save and go back to our third shot. Now for the third shot, it's inside the claw machine here. We can, make it a wide angle, but at the same time, there's too much distortions from this wide angle, and our character is really, really small. So this kind of loses the whole importance of focusing on our main character. At the same time, it's making what we don't want to see a lot bigger. So first, I will be adjusting our character into the middle with the help of guides, of course, and a center line so that this is in the middle. Sort of like that. Okay. So how do we go about capturing the scene with wide enough a lens, but having the character not so deflated? We can go here and go from the perspective to panoramic. And now we have a fisheye. And we can just turn up the lens. It's stuck at 15, but we can go beyond that. We can go 18 or 20. So this way, when we zoom in, we have this really interesting shot of our character, like she is being further squeezed around her. Like what we were saying, how this shot represents the dilemma and the pressure that she is in. So then by doing this, or by just letting this go a little bit, we're furthering that sense. And she is also right in the middle, a lot bigger in terms of area. Right? So we want to capture the edges and everything. And then once we have the glass and the reflections inside, this will become a much more interesting shot, because our secondary character will also be reflected on top. So we have our character and the reflection of another character inside. So we'll have two characters through this shot, which is really interesting. And if you go back to just the regular old white model, you'll see that it's not representing the fish eye, and that is because the fish eye can only be seen through our render shot. Okay, and now for the last one, we can move this a little back, or we can turn this a little wide, so we see more of her entire body. But with this case, we are kind of blocked by our mass of crates, so we can go ahead and move the crates But first, let's make sure that everything is centered. So, like that. And let's go to here. 90, 90, 0. Okay, so this is pretty much centered. And now let's just move the crates away. Maybe we can swap them a little. So we have the 3 in the front. Something like that. Okay, so we do want a little bit of material in the front, because that would make our foreshortening interesting, which we will now get into. So now we have our crates, and from our render view, everything's looking good. We have this nice shot of our characters. Now everything is too clear, right? We have the back and the front, and everything is really, really clear. So now let's just go here and turn on our depth of field. And let's move it out so we see our cameras. So this is our camera, and this is our depth of field. So we can't really see where we are focusing on at the moment. So we have to turn on our limits. This shows us the limit of our camera, which is right now super, super long. It's really, really far. So if our model, suppose, covers the entire distance, this is how far our view will go. So it's really, really far. And that's because our clip starts at 0.1 meters and it ends at 1,000 meters. So, you know, we can bring this back down. And now you see here, our camera is stopping here. So what this means is, if we go here, and let's just bring this over. So now we have just our character and no more background. And as this camera moves further, we have more to see. So let's have this at 50. And similarly, I'm just going to duplicate this so we get a new camera and we don't mess up our view. Suppose we want to zoom into this, like really, really far. Eventually, it's going to get cut off by black. And now if we really want to zoom this close, we can, you know, just change the clip start so it starts a lot closer to the camera. And that's how the clip works. And you can see all your limits. Control Z to go back to where we were looking. You can see your limits through this. So here, this is where the clip starts, and we just saw where the clip ends. Okay, and now the limit also shows us where we're focusing on. So here, we can just drag this down and until we see the crosshair. Now the crosshair is where our absolute focus is on. So here we want our focus to be, you know, maybe somewhere in the middle or on the first character or the second character. Let's see, because our first character has more of a face showing, we can focus on her. And now we have our foreshortening, where the front is really blurry, the black is somewhat blurred as well, and what we're focusing on is really, really clear. Now let's do that for the other shots as well. So turn on limit, turn on depth of field, and we can move this to the face of our character. Usually for the face, we are focusing on the eye, because as human beings, we typically look at someone directly into the eye, and for the render, it is that as well. And if we want this to have more of a blur, let's just turn the aperture. You want this number to be as low as you want. For those who like to play around with cameras, you will know exactly what the f-stop and the apertures are, so I don't have to explain that. But for some of you, such as me, who are novices at taking cameras, yeah, just know that the lower the number, the more blurry it is. And the higher the number, the more clear it gets. So here, I will turn this to maybe 1.6. So we get more of a blur. So the fisheye effect is more dramatic. And then for this one, let's turn off the limits. And for this one, we can we're focusing on this character, but instead, rather than playing with the distance here, we can use another method, and that is by we're going to use this as the focus. So this focuses on an object, which in this case is the eye. So as you see here, it's also focused onto the eye. And let's turn on the limit to see exactly where it is. Yeah, sometimes it's not working so properly because I think at the moment our eye, the origin of the eye is over here. So that's why sometimes it's not the most absolute. So if you set your origin to the volume, then this will go up because now our origin point is somewhere over here. So this is one way of doing it, but it's not completely the best way. So unless you place something like this, you can place an empty. So this is just an empty axis. So this is what typically people do. So you're, rather than focusing on the object, you are focusing on the empty, which is placed where you want. Okay, and now let's have this on the empty. Okay, so this now focuses on the empty, and what this does is, let's make a copy, is that if you have an animation or that you're constantly, just trying out different views, you're moving it here and there, but you're too lazy to, just focus every time. Now with this focused on the object, you can always just zoom, move, and it will have this focused. And sometimes for a film, yeah, if you're like zooming in, it'll always have this part the most clear. So that's the part of placing it empty and having it focused there. And in our case, we're focused on the empty, and we can maybe turn down this just a little bit so we have a blurry character and a clear front. And now for this, usually for the further shots, we don't need too much of a depth of field because, to be honest, even with this turned on, we'll not be able to have much of an effect other than the front of the street that's closest to you. It'll have a little blurry, so we can also turn that on, but you'll notice that from a further point of view, there's not too much of an effect. Okay, so that is for the depth of field and the different properties of a camera. Now lastly, for the camera, whoops, always beware of this check because sometimes it might mess up your camera. So for the last one, I'm going to make a copy here. You see that we have an orthographic view, and this is just a view that there is no perspective at all. It is completely flat. So for this to work, you want all your rotations to be at 0, so they're focused at 0 degree onto either axis. And then you can just move your camera from the side to side, up and down. Yeah, but right now it's being really, really funky. Oh wait, we haven't chosen our camera. Okay, here. So now we can have a really flat looking shot, sort of like a model shot. Yeah, so that's the orthographic lens. And other than that, these are just the 4 lenses, the 4 shots that compose of our main narrative. And you can always just go in and create more shots, because in the end we're not restricted to just 4 shots. We can go ahead and just come up with as many good shots as you can find, because yeah, you are your own photographer in life. And I'm pretty sure you can also discover many interesting shots. So yeah, place as many as you want and have them rendered out. Okay, so that is all for this chapter, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye for now.